There is one thing that is true and obvious, and that no arguments can change. We have not Ukrainian troops in the territory of the Russian Federation, but we have Russian troops in the territory of the Ukrainian Federation.
Это правда.
That is true. I confirm that.
Something they both agree on after a tense 2 months between the United Nations and Moscow since Russia's invasion of Ukraine got underway. The UN chief acknowledging two versions. One, that Russia views its military operation as justified in relation to various goals in Ukraine, particularly in the Donbas region. And two, based on decisions of the General Assembly, the UN Secretariat views Russia's invasion as a blatant violation of the UN Charter and international law.
The United Nations has repeatedly called for ceasefires to protect civilians and to facilitate a political dialogue to reach a solution. So far, that has not been possible. Today, across the Donbas, a violent battle is underway with tremendous death and destruction. Many civilians are being killed, and hundreds of thousands of people are in life-threatening conditions trapped by the conflict. I'm concerned about the repeated reports of violations of international humanitarian and human rights law and possible war crimes.
He called for urgently needed humanitarian corridors that are respected by all sides, proposing a contact group that includes Russia, Ukraine and the UN.
The United Nations is ready to fully mobilize its human and logistical resources to help save lives in Mariupol. My proposal is for a coordinated work of the United Nations, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and Ukraine and Russian Federation forces to enable the safe evacuation of those civilians who want to leave, both inside the Azovstal plan and in the city, in any direction they choose, and to deliver the humanitarian aid required.
Russia's top diplomat complained about growing unilateralism in the world that undermined multilateralism, pointing the finger only at Western nations in that regard, but appeared to be open to the UN's initiative around humanitarian efforts in addition to peace negotiations with Ukraine.
There was an initiative set up by this contact between our side and the United Nations. We have respondents, and we are in favor of regular dialogue. We are in favor of talking to the Secretary General of the United Nations. We do have many difficulties in the international arena, and it is always good to have an open dialogue so that we finally come back to the sources, the principles of the United Nations. On the basis of these principles, we would like to do everything we can in order to implement the principles of multilateralism.
He also called for the UN to be a place of dialogue where threats of sanctions were done away with, a clear reference to the punitive actions imposed on Russia for its invasion. The two leaders also discussed reform of international institutions and organs like the UN Security Council, with both expressing the widely held view that any effort to do away with the controversial veto is unlikely to succeed, given that it's the very P5 members who have the final say on any change. Guterres also said Africa was a double victim of colonialism because many countries on the continent only received their independence after these very international institutions were created, and affirmed his call for the greater representation of developing countries in international decision-making bodies, from Bretton Woods institutions to the UN Security Council. Sherman Brycepease, SABC News, New York.